your eyes are tearing up, and you just, respond, son of a bitch. I mean, that's it. It's the honesty of your shows. I mean, it's like some of those scenes from when Edith Bunker died, or like some of the really poignant moments on some of the shows. That scene in your film, Norman with the pink eyes, tearing, son of a bitch. What a moment.
I had no guess that they would use that. That was, of course, I knew there was a camera on the show, but it was all over. I mean, that moment was a moment between me and Rachel and Heidi. I'm glad they used it because I see it as a powerful moment, but I didn't expect it.
I want to talk about some things. We have microphones set up, by the way. If you would like to ask questions, if you want to line up with the microphones, we have 10 minutes, so we'll get to those in a minute. But I just want to talk about a couple of current things. When I watch All in the Family all the time, it's on our nostalgia station that's with WGN antenna TV. So I watch that. We have Bond. It's pretty much the Norman Lear channel, antenna TV. But when I watch Archie Bunker and I hear him spewing and ranting and all the things that we know Archie for, and then I switch over to CNN for a minute and I see Donald Trump ranting. They're almost the same guy. One's slightly more lovable than the other.
One's a great deal more lovable.
Yeah.
Which one is that?
What do you see that comparison? Do you?
I think, and I have said that I think of Donald Trump as the middle finger of the American right hand.
Wow.
It's the American people who have no place else to go, who are saying to the establishment everywhere, this is the kind of leadership you're giving us, fuck you.
You need to be making more shows.
I am.
He's
I know that you have some.
Tell him about your show.
I know that there is the little mini documentaries, right? That you're doing.
No, well, it may be something else. But
American Divided.
We just did the first episode of a Latino version of One Day at a Time. We showed it years ago. This is a Cuban-American family. My young associate, Brent Miller here, came up with the notion. Wouldn't it be good if there was a Latino One Day at a Time? Rita Moreno we're doing 3 generations of Latino women. They're Cuban-American, and the first show we did last week, it came up. It was terrific.
I wonder what you think about Netflix and all the different platforms now.
Well, this is on Netflix, and
This is on Netflix.
unlike
With all the new platforms now for maybe some of the most adventurous TV since your era of creating this.
I think this is the golden age. A, because it's now. What the hell is a golden age?
Right.
And B, because there is such great stuff. Somebody told me, only in the last few days, I've been asked, as I've been often asked, have you seen, in this case it was Night Manager. Have you seen Night Manager?
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you seen Night Manager?
Yeah.
How about Night Manager? It came from, it's British. And there were 7 episodes, AMC. And they happened to send me, my friend Josh Sabran sent me the 7 episodes. We looked at one, we couldn't put it down. We looked at the second one. And I can't wait to get home.
This is the man that introduced us a while ago. He's like, ladies, have you seen a show called Transparent? But we hadn't seen it. We're like, why is he always like 10 steps ahead of us? Always. And I gotta go, Night Manager. sure. But that's partly why you stay in the game, because you always are up to the very, very latest in entertainment.
As Phil Rosenthal said in the movie, he's the youngest, smartest guy
Yeah.
in any room that
But
he's in.
he drinks.
Got that cooking show now. That's all he does. Yes, sir.
Yes. Love the movie, by the way. Would you say, now, what would you say, I'm trying to think how to phrase this, I had it in my head. Now, would you say it's important to have serious elements in comedy? And is that something that you feel like might be missing in this generation or these days?
Well, it's a personal perspective. I do see the humor wherever there is life. And I'm a serious person. So I've always dealt with serious problems, and from the time when my father went to prison and my mother was selling the furniture, I was going to be alone. From that moment when somebody a grown-up put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Well, you're the man of the house now." Which line, by the way, is in the first episode of the new series. Man of the, yes. I mean, you say to a 9-year-old in that situation, "You're the man of the house now," what a horse's ass that was. But I knew it. And that sustained me, I believe.
What's the balance though with all of these comedies that were hilariously funny? There was also an element of seriousness and poignancy in them. Was it just show to show, or did you say, half has to be serious and half can be jokes?
I think it was a look at life. And if you look at life through the end of the telescope that sees the comedy too, that's the way you tell it.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I can't think of any better people who have made this film than Heidi and Rachel, because I really feel they did for the evangelical movement in Jesus Camp what All in the Family did for a person like Archie Bunker, put a human face on it. And it's a human face that would easily get lost in all the sort of like offensive rhetoric that goes around. So I just love to ask all three of you how you go about retaining that humanity in your work.
That's a great question. Thank you very much for saying such a thing. I mean, if you're a documentary filmmaker, you're fascinated by human behavior and you're empathetic and you want to know more, always. The minute if we lost that, it would be time to have a different career, So I think all documentary filmmakers, most of us have that in common. It's beyond a curiosity, but it's also you're penetrating and trying to understand something about yourself in your characters. And it was no different with Norman. It was, you looking in the mirror at times, and you just want to know more and understand humanity more. And Norman's got such the long view of life because he's seen so many things. And it was especially emotional, I think, for us to go on that journey.
Also, it's important to remember that no one owes you anything. That everything is, you're lucky to be there, basically. You're invited into people's lives, and it's an honor and it's a thrill.
What do you think about that, Norm?
Horseshit.
I thought you were going to say she drinks. She does.
I like his answer. Yes, sir.
Hi, Norman. Like everyone else here, I love you, and thank you so much for all that you have given the world. I have loved so many of the shows that we've seen and talked about, and I also loved one that wasn't mentioned at all, Stanford and Son. Come on, wasn't that great? I was sharing here with my mother, and I was sharing with her when I was like in 2nd grade, 3rd grade in Chicago. It was syndicated at 10 o'clock p.m., and that was past my bedtime. But I had a black and white TV. I'm old enough to have a black and white in my room, and I would sneak and watch it at 10 o'clock, and I'd be bleary-eyed the next morning. But could you share some memories about the Great Red Fox and Sanford and Son?
Well, the reason you didn't see a lot, you don't hear a lot from me about Sanford and Son is because I will, with Bud Yorkin, take full credit for having this discovered for ourselves in Las Vegas, the incredible Red Fox. Here's the way I think of him. I think if a century gives us 2 clowns like Red Fox, it's a lot. There are very few Red Foxes. His knuckles were funny. His earlobes were funny. He could walk into a room and tell you your mother just died and make you laugh. So, but his show was on NBC. Got room for a short anecdote? We were making All in the Family, and we were rehearsing at CBS Television City, and Bud was working with Red Fox and a couple of writers developing the pilot episode, and they had no other place to rehearse to be close to us, but 3 doors down in a group of rehearsal halls at CBS. Show was, we were rehearsing a pilot, which only had the 2 guys, father and son, Tamad Wilson and Red Fox. And I was trying to get CBS, because that's what's my home, and I'm in the building, and I was trying to get one of the executives to come downstairs and see a rehearsal. In the second week of not being able to get somebody else, I called NBC. 2 guys were having lunch in Beverly Hills, and on the way back to the valley, they stopped and they saw 20 minutes of what we were doing with Sanford and Son and bought it on the spot. So Sanford and Son was sold for its 9-year run on NBC. It was sold in the CBS building.
But didn't you write like 100 of them? Didn't you write like 100 Sanford and Sons?
It was in the valley. It was Yorkin was more involved in it than I was. I didn't write any.
Oh.
So Sanford and Son, I'll take as much credit as I can get for falling in love with Red Fox and bringing him to it.
I still love it though. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
First, I love Jesus Camp. This film is amazing, but we have Mr. Lear, so I have to go to him. This is more in the industry question as a writer-director, and talking about the golden age of TV that we're in, the idea that web series, writing, directing, putting your own web series up, it's like the minor leagues of baseball now. You can get that property sold. But where I want to go with is the idea I'm noodling about. So we've seen the family unit in situation comedy with Seinfeld, with Veep that's on now. We have some pretty despicable characters, but they are their own family unit. So an idea where you almost have like American Buffalo meets The Office, where it's literally a crime syndicate, but they're a family. So my question is, if with that idea of pursuing it, take me into the room of the buyers of these different Hulus and Amazon. What's the ceiling for what you can get away with in half an hour comedy these days, from your view? Thank you.
I haven't spent a lot of time in those rooms, so truth to tell, I don't know. One Day at a Time came because Netflix thought it was a good idea. At the same time, the idea was suggested to me, and the way the business goes today, they ordered 13. So we just made the first episode of what will turn out to be 13 episodes before anybody outside of the audience we made it in front of will see them. That's something brand new for me, to make 13 shows without having a show on the air. It's just amazing.
Hi.
I hope I've answered the question. That's all the information I have.
Hi, I have another question about Good Times, actually. And it actually in some ways speaks to what Russell Simmons says when he refers to the Jeffersons as an aspirational show that was made for black people and that Good Times was made for white people. And we know it's a spin-off from Maude, and I always wondered why it spun off in the direction that it did. I believe the last time we see Florida on Maude, Henry's just gotten a job as a fireman. So they've just actually gone up in terms of class, and she's quit working for Maude, so she can go home and raise her own children. And then it spins off, and they go down in terms of class. And I wonder what drove that choice, or if it was strictly narrative, or if it was partially due to the fact that it was the first African-American sitcom of the time, and there was a feeling that you had to move down in class to tell that story.
There was no thinking about moving down in class. Cabrini Green, which wasn't familiar to me, was very familiar to Eric Monti. And we set it there in a moment, in 30 seconds.
Well, not
Cabrini
even-
Green, Chicago, that's all. There was no real thinking about it except that the place existed and on so much income, the people who lived there, and that was the story we were telling.
Well, and it wasn't even about income, except that they had just moved up to the middle class. They had become wealthy enough that Florida no longer had to work. And when we shifted to good times, they could barely afford to live. So there was just a shift that occurred in that narrative, I was just wondering.
I would like to say it was well thought out, but
Good answer.
They're telling me that we're only going to have time for one more question, so I apologize.
what are you going to do with that gray hair?
I know. Okay, real quick. Everybody ask your questions really quickly. Go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Lear. I've heard in interviews that you say that laughter has added years to your life. I agree. I believe that laughter is the best memories come from laughter. What is the hardest you've ever laughed in your life?
Great question. The hardest I've ever laughed. On Maud, the Rue McClanahan character, I've just lost her name for a minute. Vivian. Vivian and Arthur are celebrating a 20-year anniversary or something like that. We know, the audience knows, but Maud doesn't know, that she has a very big surprise for Arthur when he comes home. And we know she's going to be nude, wrapped in cellophane. And he's going to have to ring the bell. We're ahead of that, we know that. Maud and Arthur and Walter go over to say happy anniversary, and they ring the bell, and Rue McClanahan, thinking it is her husband, opens the door. All we see is from here up. She goes, "Whoo!" slams the door in their face. Camera is behind Maud and Walter, and the laughter goes on. It's just the backs of these two figures. And they laugh, and they laugh, and they laugh. I mean, it was very funny to see her open the door and shut it. But then Maud shifts weight. It's a miracle of performance. She just shifts weight, still on her back, and the audience roars some more. Then she comes up and picks her earlobe, and the audience roars more.
Genius. Yes, sir.
You had a long partnership with Bud York, and he passed last year. The film doesn't make much mention of Bud, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about Bud, what it was like working with him.
Well, you saw Bud talked
Yeah.
about sending seeing One Day at a Time. I don't mean One Day at a Time, Till Death Us Do Part over there, and he sent it over here, and so forth.
But what was it like working with Bud? How did
It
you
was,
establish
we
a
had
relationship?
a great 20-some year partnership, great partnership. And we remained friends till he's passed now, not all that long ago. But we were great friends. He wanted out of the company, sold his share to Jerry Perenchio and I some years before. And so a lot of the Tandem TAT was done after Bud had left.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a question. I want to thank you for providing my husband and I with more laughter on television than we ever had. And I will forever remember when the Haitian doctor gave Archie Bunker her blood in a blood transfusion. You don't want to miss the punchline. And he's, looking at, oh my, I can't believe this. And she looks at him and she says, "Don't worry, my dear. The only thing that will happen is you'll have a strange taste for watermelon."
Thank you. Thank you.
Rachel Brady. I'm sorry, you have something to say?
I just say one thing, which is that if you like the film, tell all your friends to come see it. It's coming back to Chicago in July. Tweet about it, give it a thumbs up. It'll also be playing on American Masters on PBS in October. Yes, and they financed this film and made it happen, so you'll have many chances to see it again. So I wanted to put that out there.
You'll see some of this tomorrow morning on WGN Morning News. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time for the unbelievable Norman. Thank you.